And welcome to this week's edition of the Reigns on the Cardinals podcast here on stlsportspage.com. Rob Reigns joined as always by Mike Reigns. Mike, how are you doing today?
Doing good.
Well, we're going to start off by, first of all, by thanking all of our sponsors for making this podcast, as well as all of the content on STL Sports Page, totally free, no paywalls here. So thanks, as always, to Drury Hotels, Archwell Health, the Rawlings Experience, and AAA Travel of Missouri, as well as our other sponsors as well. But if you haven't been out to the Rawlings Experience yet at Westport, what are you waiting for? Brand new edition. The big Jumbotron TV is up outside of the on the green space there by the outside of the entrance to the museum and the shop. So get out there and check out that TV. I understand they're gonna have like games showing up there. What a fun thing that's going to be, especially if the weather's nice outside. I think everybody will enjoy that. So get out to the Rawlings Experience if you haven't been there yet. I don't think you'll be disappointed.
Absolutely not.
Go ahead,
the new video board is incredible. Just looking at the pictures and stuff, and the new green space can be really cool. And if you follow the Rawlings Experience on social media, then you've seen, Brendan Donovan and Nolan Arenado stopping by. So you never know who may be out there at the same time as you're there, right? So check it out.
Yeah, all the guys, I'm sure, that come in from out of town are going to make a trip out there when they're in town. So we're going to start off this podcast with some good news. The Cardinals are not in last place.
They're not. And with this offense, you might be thinking differently. But as we've stated before, the pitching and the bullpen has kept them in it.
Half game ahead of the Pirates. They're moved into fourth place. So when the Pirates lost to Oakland yesterday out on the West Coast. So both teams have the day off on Thursday. So when you wake up on Friday morning, look at the standings, the Cardinals will be in fourth place, not in fifth place. And I know it's been most of the time since last July. I mean, I know there's a few days here and there, especially with the first week of the season when teams weren't playing or you had days off and things that maybe technically they stuck into fourth place. But for the most part, they've been in last place since the end of last July. So maybe a step in the right direction, as we talked about, back before we even, the season even began, with that tough early season schedule in April. If the Cardinals could get through that month of April at 500, we would consider it a positive month. Well, they almost did, 14-16, 2 games under 500. Of course, they did lose the first game of May, which looked an awful lot like a lot of the games in April on Wednesday, as they lost 4-1 to the Tigers in Detroit. That wrapped up the 3-3 road trip against the Mets and the Tigers. I think the biggest problem, the biggest concern, even though we've turned the calendar into May, still has to be what we talked about most of April, which is the offense on this team. 19 of 31 games now in which they've scored 3 runs or less.
And it seems like, you look at yesterday's game, for example, you get one solo home run out of Wilson Contreras and nothing else. The other struggle seems to me is that we don't seem to get a hit until we get 2 outs. Mm-hmm. And not a whole lot you can do in that situation then, right? You get 2 on, but then all of a sudden you got 2 outs. So something has to change for the offense here soon and quick.
Well, here's the numbers. Just so I put the glasses on so I can read all the ugly numbers. And I'm sure most of them are familiar to most of the people, as we mentioned. 19 of 31 games so far this year, they've scored 3 runs or less. They are last in the major leagues now with 21 home runs. The White Sox passed them with a couple of home runs on Wednesday. Last in the National League with 109 runs scored. A 203 combined team batting average with runners in scoring position, and 13th in the National League in on-base percentage. So not only are they not getting the hits, but they're not getting guys on base either to generate those chances. And a couple times on Wednesday, they got guys on base hit into a double play. So the other concerning stat to me is that without looking at the stats, and I'm not sure, Mike, maybe you looked at the stats or not, who do you think leads this team in RBI so far this season?
I have not looked at that stat, but I would have to guess it's got to be I don't know. Wilson Contreras got to be up there, but Herrera's got to be close too, probably.
It's actually Brendan Donovan, 16 RBIs. The team's leadoff hitter. In RBI.
It tells you your bottom half of the lineup's coming through, though.
Right, that's what I'm saying. He's the one that maybe getting the chances with guys the guys when they're on base. So that's to me that's not a good stat though when your leadoff hitter has the team leading RBIs.
The other stat that jumps out to me is the Cardinals are minus 30 in run differential, and if you look at that compared to the National League, that's third from the bottom. The only 2 teams below them are the Marlins with 8 wins and the Rockies with 7 wins. So
that's not good.
The fact that they have 7 more wins than that tells you they're doing something right, but the lack of offense and the lack of power truly is both there.
breaking down a couple of the key guys, and I know we've seen some signs of life lately out of Paul Goldschmidt the last 10 games or so. He's got his batting average, raised his batting average by quite a few points. But here's the power numbers, and the power shortage is what I think is concerning to everybody. 2 home runs for Goldschmidt, 118 at bats so far this season. Nolan Arenado, 1 home run, 118 at bats. Lars Nootbaar, 1 home run, 65 at bats. So that's a combined four home runs, 296 at bats out of 3 guys that you expect to be, if not 3, 4, 5, at least 3, 4, 6 in your batting order.
And the number that none of us thought we'd be sitting here saying is Ivan Herrera with 3 home runs.
Correct.
He's combined to equal what Goldie and Arenado have done, and is not a guy we were counting on to do anything. So the fact that Goldie and Arenado are not doing anything is really pressing and really important. I don't know the right answer to this, but somewhere they got to find a way to start hitting and just get on base. Is it the launch angle aspect that they're too worried about, and the exit velocity of trying to hit home runs instead of hitting base hits, or what is the fix here? I don't know.
Yeah, it's actually 1 combined home run less than Contreras has by himself, the same number of home runs as Nolan Gorman has. And I know this hasn't been a great start to the season for Nolan Gorman, but he's at least got the 4 home runs. And then the other thing is it's one more home run than Brendan Donovan has got by himself. And Donovan hasn't actually done great things as far as getting on base either. So I think it's a concern, but the problem is I don't know how you fix it. I mean, you've got guys that you're counted on. You've sent out a couple of guys to Memphis that weren't performing well, and Victor Scott II and in Jordan Walker. Actually, we're heading down to Memphis next week to try to talk to some of those guys and see what's going on with them and their hopeful return to St. Louis at some point here fairly soon. But you look at these guys, who are the 2, maybe 3 guys that you would say are performing either at expected level for the first months of the offensive season or above average. And I think you're talking about Mason Wynn, even though he's struggled a little bit lately here, he's probably done a lot better than you expected going into the season. And Contreras has probably done, I would say, either maybe a little bit better or at least as expected, but that's about it. I don't know anybody else I would put on that list.
No, you wouldn't. Now, if you want to look at the small sample size of comparing their stats over the last 7 days or over the last 14 days, then you can start to say maybe Goldie's starting to turn this around, right? Over the last 7 days, he's hitting 350. So if that's what we can start to see, but I think as we've talked about before, we need to see the power numbers from him come back, right? And if Mason Wynn is your guy that's been leading the team here, batting 8th and 9th, then clearly we're not doing something right 1 through 7.
And the interesting thing to me is I know they've tried to do a couple of different things with the lineup a little bit. They moved Contreras up to either second or third. They've tried to shift Goldschmidt down to 5th some of these games, but I don't think that's enough of a change. I mean, when things are still not working and you're still, even if you're winning games, you're still not scoring runs. I'd try to do something different with the batting order. I may sound crazy, but I'd put Mason Wynn hitting leadoff. And I'd put Donovan hitting second, then drop Contreras to third, and try to get those are your 3 best offensive players right now. Try to get them at bats with runners on base and see what happens.
Try to put them back to back at least, right? Some
Right.
order of the lineup where they can string something together, because right now, it seems like Donovan or Wilson will get on base, and then Goldie's coming up and rolling over a ball and do a double play. We hit into more double plays than any team I've ever seen. It's unbelievable.
And the other thing is we thought this team was going to be better on the bases than they've been. I mean, we thought they were going to steal more bases, but they haven't been on enough to run. And when they get on base, they're not running. So maybe if you get Mason Wynn batting leadoff, maybe he'll run some more. Because Donovan, as good, I think he likes hitting leadoff. He does a good job normally of getting on base. He certainly takes a lot of pitches, works the count. I think to me he'd be almost a perfect number 2 hitter in the lineup, giving those guys a chance to run, because Donovan just is, that's just not a big part of his game.
When you watch Donovan and when you watch Mason Wynn, I think the reason they're having success is their pitch selection. They're not swinging at bad pitches. And so those 2 guys are taking the walks when they can get them, and they're fouling off the pitches that are out of the zone, or not swinging at them. And when you watch, some of these other guys, especially the reason that Jordan Walker got sent down is that low and away pitch out of the zone. He just couldn't stop swinging at it. And so when guys can start to recognize that pitch is coming, that's what makes a big difference. And that's why Wynn is having success. And so it makes a lot of sense to move him up in the lineup and see what can happen.
You just wonder if it's kind of a team collective situation when nobody is producing really offensively, that makes everybody press more. It's not like they're trying to cover up for 1 spot or 2 spots that are struggling offensively. They've got, a lot of spots that they're trying to cover up.
It begs the question that if the whole team is struggling offensively, is it a coaching issue that's causing this problem? Are they all coming up with the same approach that isn't working? So does something from a coaching staff or analytics standpoint need to change?
But I would argue this, though, especially the veteran hitters. Maybe to me, the coach has more influence on the younger hitters, the more inexperienced hitters in the lineup. But you're talking about Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado. You're talking about guys that have more than a decade of experience in the big league level. They know their own swing. They know what they do well. They don't. I don't think they should need a coach to tell them how to hit. I think they should be able to figure that out on their own by now. So to me, that the two main guys that are struggling at the heart of this offense, and we said it from day one, if they don't hit, this team's not going to win. So just that's the way this lineup is constructed. That's the way this team is constructed. They're the two guys you're counting on to be the anchors in the middle of the lineup, and they just basically haven't performed. It just and I know Goldschmidt has had slow starts before. MVP season in 2022, he started out April really, really poorly. But I guess the difference was you had some of the other guys that were playing better, so you didn't maybe draw as much focus and his attention on that. But if they don't get it turned around soon, I don't know what's going to happen.
And I think the frustrating thing too is when you look at it, let's look back at this last road trip, for example. You're 3-3, and there's certainly two of those games that you could have won and probably should have won, right? And then all of a sudden, you're looking very different coming back with a 5-1 road trip, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what's frustrating is they're in a lot of games, but yet you don't feel the confidence with the offense to come through in those games.
The one thing that could change in the next couple of weeks is Dylan Carlson has started his rehab outings down at Memphis. He joined the team this week at Charlotte. I haven't heard a plan about how many games or how many at-bats they want him to play. Obviously, he had a full spring training before he got hurt right at the end of spring training, hurt that shoulder. So it may just be a comfort factor when he feels like he's got his swing in place and he's okay. But I'm sure he's going to be down there for several games anyway. But maybe when he comes back, it will give that offense a little bit of a boost because he had a very good spring training and won the starting center fielder job before he unfortunately got hurt. So be nice to get him back in the lineup.
Would be very nice, yes. And hopefully he comes back ready to play and can provide a nice spark to this offense that they desperately need.
And I do think Mike Carpenter is going out on a rehab assignment as well. Obviously, not going to be counted on to the degree that Dylan Carlson is when he comes back, but it is something that I think the Cardinals will welcome him being back on the roster as well. All right, let's flip the script and talk some pitching situations here. Rob Raines, Mike Raines on the Cardinals podcast here on STLSportsPage.com. Steven Matz scheduled to have an MRI on his back on Thursday. We'll wait and see what the results of that are. His next scheduled turn in the rotation should be on Sunday. The Cardinals have not listed a starting pitcher for Sunday as of yet, but they also could slot Kyle Gibson into that start because it would be on the same number of days of rest as the doubleheader on Thursday. But if that's the case, then they would need a starter for Monday. Your thoughts on Steven Matz?
Yeah, it's one of those where like you watch him pitch and you think that he's gonna do okay, and then sometimes he doesn't, right? So it just depends which Steven Matz shows up, right? So I think that Libator has pitched really nicely, and so he could probably fill in that spot too for a little bit. But he has looked great out of the pen. So do you want to kind of disrupt that? I think obviously for this first start, you put Kyle in there and see how it works because Kyle's been pitching great.
They could, of course, make a bullpen. They could do a bullpen game for that start. You're also looking at a situation, though, starting with Friday night's game. Cardinals play 13 days in a row, the next 13 days in a row without a day off. So kind of when you put a bullpen game together, it does obviously take those guys out for a couple of days after that as far as being available to pitch in the game. So there's a couple other ways they could go if they do, decide Matz can't make that start, whether he goes on the injury list or just misses a turn. You've got, Zach Thompson that they sent to Memphis that they could bring back. The guy who's pitching the best at Memphis is Sam Roberse, one of the guys they got from Toronto last year in the Jordan Hicks trade. 3-0 with a 1.82 ERA. His 5 starts so far at Memphis, 29 innings pitched. He's got 29 strikeouts and only 6 walks. So he's a guy to watch. He is scheduled to start on Thursday night for Memphis at Charlotte. So you might get an indication of what the Cardinals are thinking a little bit if they see if he actually makes that start or if he comes out of the game pretty early on, then maybe he could be in tune to kind of take that start on Monday here if the Cardinals decide to go that route.
And one of the things that we've talked about before too is that the 3 new guys that they got in Sonny Gray and Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson have all pitched deeper in games, and we've seen that. Kyle just went through 7 the last start, and Lance has been through 7 too. So that really allows you to, if you want to go the route of a bullpen game, knowing you have the confidence in those guys to get you through 7 innings really helps a lot too. So that is one bright spot that's there too. But yes, Sam is a guy to watch to see if he's able to come up here and have some success in a couple spot starts for Matt's, depending on the situation of his elbow.
And Sam is on the 40-man roster, so you would not need an extra roster move to activate him, like they had to kind of bring up Leahy to be the 27th man in the doubleheader, and they had to put Drew Rom on the 60-day injured list. It looks like he's going to be headed for shoulder surgery, so you don't have to count on him being an option here for a while. You mentioned Gray and Lynn and Gibson. Here's the stat to me that I think shows how much that they've done what the Cardinals expected them to do when they signed him. When those 3 guys start a game so far this season, Cardinals are 10-6. When they start anybody else, the team is 4-11. So, to me, that's, and I know it's not all because of the performance of the starting pitchers, but to me, that's still kind of a telling stat that those guys have done their job. You just need to figure out, you wish they maybe kind of would have made another move to add another starter, maybe somewhere toward the back end of that rotation. You see how Mr. Imanaga is pitching for the Cubs, and you wonder if maybe something could have happened there that would have been an interesting guy to add to your roster, but didn't happen. So you make do with what you got.
Yeah, definitely. And those guys have really come through like we've said they would, right? At the beginning of the season and the offseason, we looked at it and said, are these 3 guys that we want or not?
Your dog Lucy has joined the conversation. Somebody must be walking by your house. No, I think, I don't know that you could have asked really for anything more out of Gray, Gibson, and Lynn than what they've given you to this point.
Yeah, you really can't. You can't.
The other thing, of course, I think too, the other guy that's pitching really well in the minor leagues, as we talked about, I went down and saw him a week ago, was Tink Hence, the Cardinals' top pitching prospect. He's at Springfield. His game was at Tulsa this week, and he had a really good start. Went 7 innings through a career high, 94 pitches, 10 strikeouts, only 1 walk. So don't think they'd make a move with him just yet. He's not on the 40-man roster, but he's going to obviously be the guy that they're kind of zeroing in on and watching him. It'll be interesting to see how many more starts at Double-A they think he needs before they try to move him up to Memphis and see if they get him some exposure at that level before, hopefully you're going to get him in St. Louis sometime before the end of the season. Bullpen conversation. Obviously, they've gotten great performances out of the pitchers at the back end of that bullpen. Ryan Helsley's been perfect, leads the league in saves. Jojo Romero and Andrew Kittredge have proved to be perfect 1-2 combination to set him up in addition, letting Helsley only pitch the 9th inning in those games. And then, as you mentioned, Levator's done a good job. So I think you've gotten what you needed out of most of the guys in the bullpen as well to this point.
Yeah, definitely you have, right? The bullpen has been a spotlight of the year so far that we didn't think would be there. And so it's very exciting to see how these guys are playing and how they're doing. And you have some confidence when they come in back into the bullpen to take care of this,
So let's take a look at the upcoming schedule. The Cardinals with the day off on Thursday. They open the series against the White Sox. 3 games this weekend at Busch Stadium against the White Sox, then 3 games against the Mets before they go back on the road. White Sox 6-25. So you got to look at this weekend as a game that really the Cardinals need to sweep this series because the White Sox have just been awful.
The White Sox have been really bad, and you got to find a way to win those games. There have been some frustrating games this year that we've lost that we should have won. And, you look back at last year and we struggled because we couldn't win the games we needed to win. And so that's what you have to do to be successful in this season is you have to beat the teams you need that are not doing well and not playing well.
And I don't know any way to figure out why this stat is, and it doesn't apply to the first 2 games of the series, but when the Cardinals lost to the Tigers in Detroit on Wednesday, left them 1-9 in the last game of a series. You remember last year they couldn't win the first game of a series, just like into June or something before they won the first game of a series. This year they can't win the last game. It's just kind of one of those fluky things.
Yeah, one of those weird stats that just doesn't seem to be going their way. But again, we'd rather be doing that early in April here and not late. And as we've talked about before, hey, we're not in last place and nobody's really running away with this division either. So that's the
correct
benefit that you have is you're not playing in the strongest division out there. You're not playing with the Dodgers. So you're okay there.
And then after this homestand, the Cardinals go on the road again. They play Milwaukee, go to Milwaukee for 4 games, interdivision games. It'll be important in that series. Obviously, the Cardinals were swept by the Brewers when they played here at Busch a couple of weeks ago. And then they go back out on the West Coast for 3 more games in California against the Angels. So I do want to mention, if you're happen to be going to the game on Sunday, this Sunday when the Cardinals play the White Sox, it's a home run for hunger day for the Cardinals. They're doing a food drive to benefit some local food banks. So there's information on our website, stlsportspage.com, about what items they're looking for, what you could bring, and how you would drop them off. So a good cause to kind of help stock some of the local food banks with items that they desperately need at this time of year. So salute to the Cardinals for doing that home run for hunger campaign on Sunday. So if you're going, be sure you try to help them out with bringing some goods down to the stadium. So. Thank you to all of our title sponsors again. As we mentioned, if you want to sign up for our newsletter, be sure you do that elsewhere on the website, as well, of course, as checking out all of our other content here on the site. Again, thanks to those guys for keeping it a totally free content. We appreciate all the comments, appreciate all the feedback from everybody about this podcast, as well as about all the other content up on the site. Archwell Health, Drury Hotels, the Rawlings Experience, and AAA Travel of Missouri, the main sponsors that we have, as well as Tozy Dental, as well as Nuremberg Lumber and Hardware, and Crawford Butts Insurance. So our salute and shout out to all of those guys for helping us here on the website. Michael, it should be an interesting week for the Cardinals with these 6 home games, so hopefully they'll take advantage of the schedule.
Let's hope we can take advantage of coming home and being here and put together a nice homestand.
We'll be back with another edition of Reigns on the Cardinals podcast next week. Enjoy the games, everybody. Thanks for listening to our podcast here on stlsportspage.com.